now is the exciting part. We're going to sew our top part to the bottom part. And so I am just going to show you how to do one of these because it's the same. So I already have brown in my machines, and I've been mostly doing the large anyway, so I'm going to stick with the large. Oh, and I have to find my foot. Okay, so we're going to fold back the exterior right now. Just fold it out of the way and put a few clips or pins here to keep these layers together. And we're going to sew this closed and then trim it so that it doesn't get in the way of the fold. Now what I like to do is sew about 1.25 inches from the side for the large, and for the small 1 inch. So let's see, 1.25 inches for me has me going about right there. Just make sure you keep the other layers out of the way. And yes, this does decrease the amount of area, volume you have inside this part of the purse. But if you have things that fall that deep anyway, then you won't be able to fold it closed. So that's what it looks like on the inside. When I open up my zipper, look inside, I can still put things in there. I can put sunglasses, I can put keys. I don't think it's quite big enough for a phone. If you had your phone in there, I don't think you could fold it closed. But can do a checkbook. Okay, and now we're going to take these bottom edges and baste them closed. So I'm going to match up my centers on the bottom. And close this. Now this is kind of, this fabric has just a little bit of stretch to it, even with the fleece, so hopefully this won't cause any wrinkles or anything. I haven't had this with other fabrics. Okay, so I have my center marks. I'm going to be using those. And I've got my bottom part. I don't know what else to call this. This is the card slot part. We need to put these right sides together. Of course, you've got 2 right sides on this top part. So the part that does not have the snaps, you match up with the exterior on the card slot thing. So I've got my center mark right here, and then earlier I marked the center top on this. I'm going to match it up. I'm not going to match it up with the lining. I'm just going to match up the exterior. And then I'm going to clip all the way. Oops, you know what I did? I forgot to baste this closed. Makes it just a little easier to work with. And this is why I have my instructions right next to me, help me not forget basic things. No, you don't have to baste it closed, but I find it a little bit easier to work with. Okay, back to having these 2 exteriors together. It's harder to find the center part when I've got this basted closed, but there it is right there. There's my mark. Okay, and now I'm going to go all the way across with my clips. I always like to double check. There should be about 1/2 inch of exterior right there, that beyond where your wallet ends. Same thing over here, so that's good. That means we have it all lined up. And now I'm going to sew it from this side. And as I sew, I'm going to push this part of the lining out of the way so that I can start at this edge. If you already have the interfacing in, yes, this part can be just a little tricky. All right, I am going to sew with a 3/8 inch or 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now I do have these D-rings, so make sure your D-rings are pointed away. They didn't fold themselves up. If your machine has a hard time with these layers and with the D-ring, you can switch to a zipper foot, but I think because of all the layers, I think that my machine will be okay using a normal foot. Sometimes it does better with a bunch of layers. Okay, and now I'm going to go backwards over that. Sometimes going backwards makes my machine break needles, but this is doing okay. Because I really want to make sure that this D-ring is secure. And as I get to this side, I will just push the lining this way. Luckily, even though my fabric is thicker, it's very easy for the needle to push through because it's not a thick weave. Okay, and I am finished sewing this. Okay. If you did not already put in the interfacing, Q, then you'll need to put it in now. And like I mentioned before, because I knew that I was going to be putting it in at the end like this, I cut it a 1/4 inch narrower right then when I cut it. If you have not done that, cut your thing a 1/4 inch narrower and fold it like a hot dog. Insert it inside. And just work it down into these corners. Now, if you have a hard time getting it down to the corners, the corner tool can be helpful to push everything flat. This is not quite all the way down there. So I'm going to put my hand in and just pull it. Pulled it too far. I want these corners to be in, I want the corner of the interfacing to be in the corner of this fabric as best as possible. Pressing everything flat. I'm going to try to push my seams outward again with this seam tool. And feels like it needs to go down just a little more, but I think that's actually it. Okay. So it's up to this top edge. It's up to the top edge. And I am going to now, I want it just a little farther down. It's just a hair too long. Okay, better. All right. So now I'm going to take this and just shove it farther out of the way. I'm going to take my lining and fold it under half or a third of an inch. And when I put it down like this, it will cover the seam from before, which is hard to see because it's brown on brown, but I have it just covering the seam. And you can do two things here. You can use pins or you can use double-sided tape to keep it in place. I'm going to fold it all the way on the left and the right under a third of an inch, or sorry, 3/8 of an inch, not a third of an inch. Make sure it's just covering this seam line. Yeah, this doesn't want to go up. I poke myself in the finger, but it's not quite working. And then over here, okay. Now, usually I sew from the back side, but I am not super confident in my seam. It's really hard for me to do this on camera and have it be perfectly straight. It doesn't look perfectly straight. Also, I'm using brown thread that will not show up too much on the back, but on the front, if I get it wrong, it'll show up a lot. So I am going to sew it from this side, but you can sew it from either side. And I am going to increase my stitch length a bit. And I'm just going to edge stitch this. Of course, as I sew over that D-ring again, it's going to be a lot of thickness, so I'm adjusting some of the seam as I go because it's not super straight. Just snipping a thread. All right, carefully over the thick part. Uh-oh, my D-ring got folded back the wrong way. There. At the end, I'm gonna back stitch. Let's see. My machine does not always like back stitching when it's thick. All right, and I am done sewing. The only thing left for this version is to press it. So I'm going to go and press it. I also want to check how my stitching did on the back. Pretty good, not perfect. I would have preferred to stitch from this side, but not with this fabric that doesn't keep a crease particularly well. All right, so other than ironing it, pressing it, it is done. And where is my strap? I can even hook the strap to it. So I'm really happy with how this one ended up. And I'm going to finish the small one as well. And then for the small one, I will show you how to glue it in its frame. Well, thank you.